Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to the communities part of our communities and education agenda today. I'll first of all put you on to Diane for apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest.
We have apologies from Councillor Wilson and Councillor Murphy. No substitutions. Convener will now move to a roll call. Can the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting, either in person or remotely? Provost Brennan.
Remotely.
Councillor Clofferty.
Interest.
Councillor Curley.
Remotely.
Councillor MacLeod. Councillor MacLeod. Councillor McCabe.
Remotely.
Councillor McElhenney. Councillor McElhenney. Councillor McVeigh.
Remotely.
Councillor Quinn.
Remotely.
Councillor Robertson.
Remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
I've got 2 declarations to make. If that's
Yeah, on you go, Elizabeth.
okay, thanks. For item 4, I'm a member of the board of Chaos Youth Theatre Company who got some culture theatre who got money. And item 6, the Beacon.
Yeah. And myself for the Beacon as well, Diane.
I've got a declaration of interest, obviously, member of Implied Leisure now.
Not myself as well. Okay. Just before we start, as you know, Natasha has put her apologies in today. The reason for it is, unfortunately, Natasha's died yesterday. So I'm sure we'll pass on our condolences to Natasha when we see her. And some of you will know our dad was unwell for a few months, but it came on a bit suddenly towards the end. So we will pass on our best wishes to Natasha when we see her.
Excuse me, Councillor Crowley, and Councillor MacLeod's just joined.
And Councillor MacLeod has just joined us as well. And Councillor McElhenney by the looks of it. Chris, are you there?
Convener.
Yep, Councillor McElhenney. Okay, so with that, can we move along to agenda item number 2, which is the Communities Revenue and Capital Budget Report for 2021-2022. And Ian's going to take us through that. Ian?
Okay, thanks, Convener. So this was a report to the Advice Committee of the Communities Revenue and Capital Budget positions at period 5, and that's up to the end of August 21. So the main area to refer to, firstly, is section 5 of the report. That provides you details of the 21-22 revenue budget. The current budget for the communities part of the committee is 4.436 million, and the latest projection is an underspend of 62,000, and that's an increase in expenditure of 52,000 since the last committee. Libraries and museums are projected to overspend by 48,000. Income is projected to under-recover by 58,000, and non-domestic rates projected to overspend by 6,000. And these overspends are partially offset by underspends for utilities and goods for resale. Sports and leisure projected to underspend by 48,000. So following the approval of the swim environment that's been requested in paragraph 8.1 of the report on Appendix 6, there was a projected underspend of 45,000 for under-16s free swimming. And there's also minor variances for the 3G pitches, crawl holes budget and rental income. Community safety projected to underspend by 41,000. And that's again following the environment being requested in paragraph 8.1 in Appendix 6, and that it's the remaining variance is due to vacant posts. Community halls projected to underspend by 21,000. Letting officers are projected to underspend by 16,000, and community hubs resources projected to underspend by 5,000. Section 6 of the report gives you details of the community's capital programme. The current budget for the capital programme is 4.136 million, with 759,000 projected to be spent in the current financial year. There's slippage of 578,000, or 43% from the original budget. And up to the end of period 5, expenditure was 288,000, or 37.9% of the expected total for the year. And I can report that the cost of the overall programme is currently being contained within budget. So the updates and the kind of technical aspects will be given in the paper following this one. So moving on to section 7 of the report, in Appendix 5, that gives you details of the community's earmarked reserves. The total earmarked reserves are 92,000, and all of that is expected to be spent in the current financial year. To date, there has been expenditure of 27,000, or 29.3% of the total for the year, and there's no slippage to report at this time. Section 8 of the report in Appendix 6 gives you details of the 2 environments being requested this cycle. The first one will transfer 38,000 to the Policy and Resources Committee to fund the 2 new temporary posts within HR payroll. And the second environment will transfer 16,000 from the Communities Committee to the Education Committee, and that's to fund additional swimming lessons for primary 5 children who missed out on the lessons last year due to COVID restrictions. So committee are asked to note the current projected underspend of 62,000 for the revenue budget, to note the financial position of the capital programme, and to approve the environments as detailed in paragraph 8.1 in Appendix 6, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ian. Before I open it up to questions, I should apologise for the late arrival of the appendices. I think members would have probably only got them yesterday, so apologies for that. That's Appendix 5 and Appendix 6. So with that, can I open it up to any questions? I can't see any questions on the chat. Steve McCabe. Stephen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the environments, and in particular the first environment, in terms of the sort of to HR from community safety. What's the rationale behind that?
Through you, convener, I think that there's been pressures in the HR payroll department, you know, like pressures of workload, and it was decided that they would require additional 2 temporary posts, and the CMT instruction was to fund that from the underspend within the directorate. So the obvious underspend to keep it employee costs was the community safety, where they've had traditionally had an underspend there due to the vacancies. So
although it's moving committees, it's contained within the same directorate.
Yeah, it's just because the HR part of the directorate goes to P&R, so it's going cross committee, so it requires a environment.
I'll let Ruth comment on that one as well. Stephen, Ruth.
So you convener, yes, it's within the same directorate, so it's the directorate containing the spend within itself, and also we've got to take cognizance of the fact that we as a committee and also education are also putting a lot of pressure on the payroll as well. We've got a lot of additional resources coming in, and a lot of pressure on our corporate colleagues, so that we're causing some of the pressure, but we're containing it within the directorate.
Okay, Steve.
Okay, that's great. That's perfectly understandable now.
If there's no other questions, can we agree the recommendations and agree the environment?
Great.
Thank you. And can we move to agenda item number 3, which is Community's Performance Report on the Capital Programme, Progress and Asset Related Items. And Hugh's going to take us through this. Hugh?
Oh, for yourself, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Just to give you an update of where we are on the Communities Capital Funds. Myself and Eddie are here to take any questions after I go through it quickly. Just to give you an update on some of the projects, I'm not going to go through all the projects, but I'll give some information on certain things, and obviously you can read the rest of them. So 5.1 Lady Alice Bowling Club. We continue to work strongly, closely with Lady Alice Bowling Club. I'm delighted to say the lease has now been signed, and we are working very closely with them to try and find external funding. As you can remember from previous committee reports, if the funding wasn't agreed by the end of March 2022, the club would use the outstanding money that we gave them. So the club are obviously having a plan B and a plan A and plan B to go through this at the present moment. And we're very closely, but the club are aware that if they don't get any external funding in, and they have got some in, but not enough in to do their full aspirations of design work, then they would be using the money that we've got allocated to them, which is 192,000. So we're working on that. 5.2, we continue to work on the tennis, and we're waiting for planning permission to be approved. And you see within the paragraph there is that we're working very closely with our stakeholders to make sure that the planning goes through in time for the new development early next year. Key thing for the 5.3 is the leisure pitches asset training. As you see within that, some of the pitches have already been done. Lady O'Taylor pitch has now been done, and Eddie's team is now looking at the replacement schedule for 2022 to 2023. I've noted the last time Grieve Road, Wimsby was continued to wait for building control, and we've done a slight update on that. The other thing I would want to just bring to your attention to is the mobile 4. Officers from Eddie's team are still working very flat out on this to try and get this resolved as soon as we possibly can. Hopefully this will be going to tender very soon to make sure that we've got the right spec to change this and develop this plan in next year. King George Building, again, Alan McClintock team's working on this to make sure we've got a plan together. We all have to have this completed as contract signed by early 2023. On the external partner ages, delighted to say that we've now managed to put in a partly branching out application this year to Regeneration Capital Fund, which was submitted on the 22nd of March. Also delighted to say now all the relevant paperwork and funding agreements now be completed with the main shed project, and we're now waiting for tenders to be brought in for that. Again, that all has to be signed again, completed, just paperwork signed and tender signed by the end of March 22. Slight delay within Craigend Resource Centre due to ongoing utility issues, is delayed about 8 weeks, probably delayed now about 10 weeks in phase 1, but phase 2 should be starting as soon as we get that completed. But we are working very closely with Craigend Resource Centre to do that. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thanks for that, Hugh. I'll open up for questions from members. First one's from the provost. Martin.
Thanks, Jim. I was just going to ask you, can you give us a tentative date for the indoor tennis centre being completed?
For yourself, Convener, at the present moment we can't do that because we're still waiting for plan permission. Plan permission has been put back and now until December, and we can't give you a date until we get full planning permission. One of the conditions on getting planning permissions is that we get the full amount of money back from stakeholders like Sports Scotland and Tennis Scotland. So we can't really give you a date until that's confirmed.
If the planning permission goes through, can you give us any kind of date then?
Yeah, if the planning permission is approved in December, obviously I don't think we'll be on site before the end of the year, and it's a 20-week project if the timescales go follow.
Thanks very much, Hugh. Thank you.
Okay, Martin. Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was just following on from the promise. You probably asked the questions I was going to ask, but I mean, it is pretty frustrating, the delay in this project, and I know it had to be sort of redesigned, etc., and new planning permission sought. But I would hope we're impressing on, and I don't want to unduly interfere with the planning process, but I would hope we're impressing on the planners the need to progress this project as soon as possible.
Yeah, for yourself, Convener, yeah, Councillor McCabe, we are working closely with our planning department on this to make sure that it's going through. I think it was just a backlog of a number of things that had to be done, and it was put back 4 weeks, but hopefully we're hoping that we should have indication of planning on around about the 12th of November, and then it'll go to December committee.
Okay, thanks.
Tommy, Councillor McVeigh.
Yeah. thanks for the upgrade on the Grieve Road Community Centre. It was raised at the Community Council last week. Is Eddie still confident of the completion date for first quarter 2022?
Eddie, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, through you, convener. Yeah, we're still confident that date's achievable. The works are out to tender. In fact, they're due back very shortly. So that should see it starting on site, hopefully in the not too distant future, and certainly be complete before the end of the current financial year.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie.
I'll go to Councillor MacLeod. Jim, have you got any questions on this paper?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Two questions. Well, one's already been covered. I was going to ask a similar question to both the Provost and Stephen has raised about the indoor tennis centre. I mean, it seems an incredible length of time since we first started talking about this. I think it might have been a way back even previous to 2017 in the last council. So it just seems to have taken forever and a day. So hopefully things do move on as quickly as they can. I was also going to ask not just about a completion date once planning is taken, but sorry, just 1 second here. But it was more so for a start date. You know, once planning's been given. But I noticed that Hugh was saying hopefully early in the new year, once we find out about planning. My other question was in a similar sort of vein about the community hub, the King George VI building. I've actually had quite a few constituents asking me what's happening about the building, and I've told them, you know, what the process is. But just wondering when things are likely to get finally completed and the building back up operational and open again. So I just wonder, Hugh, if you're able to give us any indication as to when we might see that happen. And finally, just to say sorry for coming in late. I had that problem. That's why I didn't join the meeting earlier. But I would have declared that I've got an interest in partly branching out regarding the regional community fund bid. So just if you could note that, please. But yeah, Hugh, if you could let us know about George VI building, if you could. Thank you.
Well, put that to Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie, could maybe do that
for you, Eddie?
Yeah, I'll take that. Thanks, convener. As noted within the report, we have to have an acceptance, or be in a position to issue an acceptance prior to the end of the current financial year. So on that basis, we'll be looking at a kind of mobilisation period in the weeks in early April and maybe run into May, and hopefully getting a start on site around about that point in time. I don't know the contract period off the top of my head. I'd need to check that with technical services, but it would be certainly no longer than a year, and probably, you know, a few months short of that on site. So that's a rough indication, but as always, it's difficult to put a date on things until we have progressed it to tender and then acceptance stage, and at that point you have more certainty as to the programme.
Yeah, Jim, so thanks for that, Eddie. So would I be safe in saying then, if you're talking about springtime starting the work, hopefully, if you're talking about a year, then we're talking about maybe springtime 2023 for completion then, yeah?
Approximately, maybe a little earlier, just depending on when we actually get it on site.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim. Do we have any other questions? Can't see any in chat, so if not, can we agree with recommendations? And can I move to agenda item number 4, which is the community recovery report, and it'll be Ruth who takes through that one. Ruth?
So this report is part of the recovery planning for the community side of the committee, and lots of very good news stories in this report, underpinned by strong and increasingly developed partnership working. So the Culture Collective, and Alana is here today, who's taking a lead with that. It's providing support for over 40 artists and creative practitioners. The Culture Collective is starting to work. It's brought a lot of money into the area, and also a lot of very positive morale along the arts and culture sector. 5.2 is about the Summer of Fun. 16,000 different sessions provided through the Summer of Fun funding, and as I've previously said to committee, commendably across sector, across the sport and the arts. But there were two other sums of funding over the summer that we should probably note, and the last final three paragraphs of this of 5.2 takes us towards that. We were given £30,000 from Sports Scotland, £15,000 of which was used to give under 16s access to in-play leisure gyms. We've got very, very positive feedback about that and the usage of that. And the other 15,000 was given to small community sports clubs. The penultimate paragraph there says about the national access to childcare funding which we received. That was to provide childcare for families who needed it to access work during their recovery from COVID. There was an awful lot of learning through that. Probably fair to say that we didn't have as high a take-up as we expected, but that could also be because of the hybrid working with people returning to work after COVID. And the last, ironically, the last two words are missing from that sentence, which should say to inform next steps. And then the last paragraph is about that the Scottish Government is going to learn from the events this summer to look at summers going forward and what they might look at across Scotland for holiday provision. The Duke of Edinburgh programme, despite the pandemic, the team managed to offer a huge amount of sessions, and also there's a commitment to playing catch up for those who missed, and I know that Hugh's out for recruitment just now to try and double the sessions we're delivering. 5.4 is the sports and physical activity strategy that was launched that was taken to the Alliance board, and 5.5 just gives an update on the Muriora Festival, where we're in the planning phase of that, and also linking that to the community events. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. I'm quickly looking at the chat first of all. Can't see any questions in the chat just now, so I'll go to Councillor MacLeod. Jim, have you got any questions on this paper?
Jim, no question as such, but I just like to commend the service and everybody involved in the Summer of Fun. I had several constituents who said to me that them and their families were very grateful for the activities that were put on. Their children took part in some of them, and they were delighted. And the fact is that they were free as well. As we know that. Long summer weeks, 6 or 7 weeks of long summer holidays can lead to boredom for many kids, particularly during the pandemic. So they were very grateful, the people that spoke to me. So well done, and here's looking forward to further years of summer fun. Thanks.
Okay, I'll go to the chat questions now. First one's from Councillor Robertson. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Jim. So the questions that I've got a couple actually. The first one is probably more a comment actually than a question. It's about the Summer of Fun. Again, it really was excellent. I think we did a brilliant job, and I think I've already said that the branding of it as Summer of Fun was really successful. I think it's really honest and good that we've kind of picked up the issue about the booking system, but I don't think that's insurmountable. I think it is something that we could resolve and just keep improving this type of thing if we did it in future. So it's merely an observation in terms of that one. Second one is a question, and it's about the Duke of Edinburgh side of things, and I think I'm returning actually to a question that I had asked before. I think in addition to the provision that's already available for Duke of Edinburgh, we've also moved Duke of Edinburgh into the curriculum in some of the schools, and I was just querying, I think I had queried before but I've not had an answer in terms of how that's actually happening. If someone in third year was doing Duke of Edinburgh bronze, are they going to get a bronze award? I'm just not sure if the loop's been closed on that one. And my last thing is really just in terms of sport and physical activity strategy, and it's just a wee check-in because I know we've had quite a lot of updates on this, but just in terms of the role that Sport Inverclyde as an umbrella organisation have had in terms of consulting and working with us in the development of that particular strategy.
Okay, thanks. I'll let Hugh come in first of all on the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah, thanks for yourself, convener. Councillor Robson, within the secondary school curriculum, the schools arrange that for the team to come in. Not every school has got that at the moment, but we're working with the head teachers to do that. And when they are in the school, then they can achieve the bronze. Possibly the key thing they need to finish at the end is the expedition part of it, which is done between a certain period of time. So we are working with them at the moment. I'm delighted that Duke of Edinburgh Scotland have agreed for us due to the pandemic to extend the period of expeditions up to December as long as the weather's safe. And I know the team are working and doing a lot of expeditions now until the end of November with the bronze and silvers to make sure that they get them completed. But key to make sure that the development of the curriculum is an important element of the award. And I'll have conversations with the rest of the head teachers who are particularly not doing that at the present moment, but we're keen to get that started for the next term.
Okay, and the tie-in 5.4, the sports and physical activity strategy.
I can maybe take that too. Yeah, for yourself, convener, again, is obviously the present stage. We're keen to make sure that the action plan that comes out for the activity and Active Inverclyde is meeting with all stakeholders, so we will be going to engage with all stakeholders, including the group that you've managed, to make sure that they get an insight of it. This is an overall high-level strategy, but we're keen to make sure that the local sports group develop the action plan for us, and we're working very closely with our colleagues in the first sector to do that.
So, okay, Elizabeth. Provost Martin.
Thanks, Jim. I was merely wishing to add what Elizabeth and Jim had said about Summer of Fun. I think that was a kind of fairly heroic achievement to have done this, to have put together 16,000 sessions at fairly short notice. All the people concerned are to be commended. I can't think of another authority which has done quite as well this summer. And thank you again, all of those who made this possible.
Okay, thanks, Martin. We'll go on to the next questions from Chris Curley. Chris.
Thank you, Jim. Just wanted to go back to the Summer of Fun with respect to the £30,000 from Sport Scotland, and 15,000 of which was spent for under 16 access to Inverclyde gym facilities. I'm glad that this was incredibly popular and well received, but I'm just wondering, do officers have any data with respect to how many times the actual the facilities were accessed, and by what kind of, what do you call it, where it was accessed, and also do you have any information about the under 16s who are actually accessing it? Because you want to just see if it's who's it getting through, how's it got through, and how many people used the actual ability to actually go into the gyms for free.
Yeah, for yourself, convener. Very good question, Councillor. We had a number of young people accessing. I think it was 2,400 young people accessing the gym across the authorities, and that's including all the gyms. We had to do a report separately back to Sport Scotland, which I could get updated for this report. Key thing for us, it was a mix between girls and boys, but primarily it was a lot of girls, especially within the Glasgow area. And it was a very good, for the 7 weeks that were open, and it was mostly every day that young people were using the gyms, and we're certainly looking at that more in depth about moving forward with other funding streams coming in later on.
Okay, Chris, is that okay?
Thank you. Just for confirm, were we using the sort of like the card system then to manage and get the information about who was using it?
For yourself, convener, unfortunately we couldn't use the card system because it wasn't working in outlet. It just works in the swimming pools. But we are looking at that coming with the new national entitlement card. I'm working very closely with Young Scott and Inverclyde Leisure. From the 1st of April, that card now will record everything that Inverclyde Leisure uses for young people, tying that back to free swimming. So we're working on that at the present moment, but unfortunately the card was only for swimming.
All right, so that's quite interesting, because obviously last year we were told we couldn't use entitlement card, but that we're going forward we might be able to use entitlement card.
Yeah, it's a new, for yourself, convener, there's a new card system being brought in, and we've been engaging with them now. It only happened in the last couple of months. It's a new card system coming in from an improvement service, and we've managed to look at that with Inverclyde Leisure, so and we're quite hopeful that will be achievable.
Oh, that's good news.
Okay, Christopher, I can't see any other questions. My only comment would be with regard to the Duke of Edinburgh, where we actually said we had 54% enrolment. Can I just say, I think that's an absolutely fantastic figure, given the year we've had. You know, it looks 54%, but given what we went through, and given how probably proud we are of our Duke of Edinburgh achievements in the area, you know, you've got to take your hat off to Hugh and the team and all the ones who provide that service. So again, please put our thanks to them. It's very well done. And with that, if there's no other questions, can we... Oh, I've got a question from Chris McLenny. Chris, just get in there.
So, sorry, convener, I was wondering why you're moving on. I noticed I typed Q but not enter. Apologies. Just, it's in regards to the last item as well, 5.2, the same point on free access to Inverclyde Leisure's gym facilities. I'd be quite keen to get more information on this, so could I request, doesn't really need to be an amendment, but if so, that we get a further report back, maybe setting out the financial implications for this policy to be rolled out all year, so that we could perhaps consider if that's something the council would want to fund in the raft for other priorities, and also how many young people would be projected to benefit from that.
Okay. I'm looking at Hugh here because obviously it's a fair enough request, but I'm looking to see how easy that request is and how straining on officers' time that will be to get that. So I'm looking for some guidance from our officers. If Councillor McElhinney's request is relatively straightforward to do, then fine, but you need to feed back to us if you know that it's not as straightforward as that. It's going to be quite time consuming and maybe even costly, so I'm looking for officers to give us a bit of guidance. Bonnie?
Yeah, we can do that. I think just given the difficulties we've got about profiling who it actually was, I don't know how detailed the report would be, but we'd certainly be able to say, well, how many people attended and what the implications would be financially going forward. But yeah, we can do that aspect of it, but actually profiling like we would for free swimming and things, I don't know how successful that's going to be, but we'll look into it.
I'll let Ruth comment as well on that, Tony. Thanks. Ruth?
Yes, there will be an element of not knowing. We had, over the summer, we had atypical behaviours, I would say, because people were within the country, they weren't going away, they weren't on holiday. So we saw people behaving in a different way. So whilst there was a lot of gym usage, would there have been that over any different summer? Also, over the summer, people will tend to use the gym more than they will during term time. And also, if they're anything like my own personal gym usage, I'll tend to use it more in January and February, and like the rest of the adult world. So I suppose the answer is it would be difficult to give an accurate prediction until we had a year's worth of data. So there would be an element of guesswork in it, but certainly we could work with Inverclyde Leisure to look at what it might look like and bring something back to the it would be through the members' budget working group if there's a budget implication. But we could look at initial work around it and see what we can bring back.
Before I let back in, Chris, I'll take Stephen in. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfectly reasonable request to make, but I mean, it might not necessarily be that we're talking about it being free. It might be that it's subsidised, because obviously we're looking at a different approach in terms of the swimming. as well. So, and clearly in terms of the sort of the pitch hire, etc., we've moved to a sort of grant system in terms of that. So it might be it's not just about looking the option of making it free, but potentially subsidising it. But any initiative that obviously can encourage young people to take up healthy activity is something worth considering.
Okay, so you've heard the officers, they're quite happy to do a paper and probably a report back to the budget working group. Chris, if you get any further comment?
Thanks, Chair. Expertly chaired as ever.
Okay, so if we can agree with that, then can I move on to agenda item number 5, which is the WAP institution collection policies, and it's Alana is going to take us through that. So welcome, Alana.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Through your convener, the purpose of the report is to seek committee approval for the collecting policies of the Maclean Museum and the Watt Library and Inverclyde Archives. Due to the rules around museum accreditation evidence, the policies are presented separately. The museum policy was last approved at committee in November 2016. Any revisions have been for clarity and brevity only, so there are no substantial changes to that policy since it was last approved by members. The Library and Archives collecting policy is being presented to the committee for the first time. Happy to take any questions on the report or on the policies.
Okay, thanks, Alana. Checking with, I'll go to Councillor Clyde first on the telephone. Jim, have you got any questions on this?
Yeah, I just wondered how many art pieces or artefacts we've got at the moment that are being lent out with Inverclyde.
Through your convener, I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it's not very many. It's not very many. The one loan at the moment is one of our paintings is down in Milton Keynes at a Laura Knight exhibition down there. Everything else would be a longer term loan. I would be able to come back to you with a specific figure separately. I'm afraid I don't have that figure off the top of my head.
That would be good. Also, I'd be interested to find out if, likewise, if we've got how many things, or have we got anything at the moment that were borrowed from elsewhere. Thank you.
Through you, convener, we have not borrowed anything that I'm aware of at the moment. So the exhibitions that we have on show at the moment are all of our own works.
Okay, thanks, Alana. Chris, I'm just making sure that you're back in again. Can you hear us okay? Councillor McLean. I can see his name on the, so I assume that he's in. Okay, so with that assumption, I'll go to Councillor McKay for this question. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, convener. No difficulties with the paper and what's proposed, but I had the opportunity a few weeks ago through the good offices of Stuart McMillan MSP to hear a presentation from Renfrewshire Council about the sort of work they're doing in the Paisley Museum project, and the sort of, I suppose, the ambitions they've got and the challenges that they faced in terms of taking that project forward. And it reminded me of the challenges that we faced previously when we were looking to refurbish and extend the Watt institution, and the difficulties we had in terms of securing external funding, and particularly from Heritage Lottery. And obviously subsequently we scaled back the project, and I think there's been a very good job done in terms of the refurbishment work, and obviously there is the plan to put a lift in as well to make it more accessible. But I suppose it was probably disappointing that we weren't able to realise that original ambition, because we certainly have world-class collections within the institution. That certainly was recognised by Alana's colleague in Renfrewshire, who was speaking to us as well. And I mean, I would certainly myself would hope that we we haven't abandoned that ambition, and that it's something that we can look at and potentially revisit. I know there are significant challenges around our own capital at the moment because of funding cutbacks from the government, but I think if you don't ask, you don't get, and it's maybe something that we should look at again. So it's just to seek assurance from officers that we haven't given up on that, and it's something that we could look at again.
Yes, through you, convener. Yes, absolutely. The Heritage Lottery are very keen to put funding into Inverclyde. We're one of their strategic areas of focus, and we members will remember that we have funding from the Heritage Lottery for the What Voices project, which is putting capital funding into the creativity space, which is in one of the other papers in today's session, and it is also going to allow us to redisplay our main museum display. So there is still Heritage Lottery money to come. In terms of more work to be done to the building, yes, it would be possible to work up further bids, but I suppose it would be important for the local authority to bear in mind that a match fund would be required for any sort of capital bids that we put into the Heritage Lottery, or probably to pretty much any other national funder that we approached. But that's not to say it couldn't be done, but obviously there would be discussions to be had in advance of that as to what a match fund might look like. Really, with national funders, there's almost always a match fund, unfortunately.
I mean, I think convener, I entirely accept that, but I think it would be useful if we did ask officers to sort of look at revisiting this proposal and bringing a report before committee in due course. I'm not saying the next committee, but it's something that I think we shouldn't lose sight of, because I think we do have a magnificent set of collections that, as I said, are world class, and while the existing facilities are very good, they could always be better. And if there is the potential for external funding to be attracted, then it's something that we should pursue. I think you're on mute, convener.
Is the whole thing on mute?
Yes. Can you see me now?
You're off mute now. It was on mute temporarily.
Okay, sorry about that. Chris Hurley. Chris.
Thank you, convener. I think it's a good point. We want to also make sure can use the collections to the best. And I think there's maybe opportunities for funding, and I'm just thinking in my mind of the possible bid we're preparing for what they call the culture quarter. That's maybe something that we could utilise for respect to that. Just thinking aloud. With respect to my question, though, I was on 5.1, and I welcome the fact that the policy now includes a repatriation, or does include a repatriation. It probably was always there in the background. I'm just wondering how many requests we've had for any repatriation of our items.
Through you, convener, not in my time as a service manager, we have had no requests at all.
Do we have I don't know how we best would describe this, but do we have an idea about whether or not any of our items have probably been obtained through private collections, etc., that might be considered appropriate for repatriation?
Through your convener, yes, we are doing a bit of research work on that at the moment. As part of the What Voices project, we are looking at how best to tell the story of Inverclyde through the objects in the museum, and we're looking to, it's a bit of a technical term, but we're looking to decolonise our collections. So part of that process will be looking at the provenance of some of those collections and how the museum came to obtain them. Members will be aware there is also a historic links to Inverclyde's historic links to the slave trade working group at the moment, who are also working through these issues, and it'll be possible to bring an update to committee on this at a later date.
Thank you, that's most welcome.
You're on mute again, convener.
Right, I'm blaming Anne Sinclair. Anne Sinclair is muted. I think she's doing it on purpose. Sorry, Martin.
Thanks very much, Jim. I'm just trying to figure out in my own head how 4.2 and 5.1 tie up. We currently enjoy accredited status. Is that dependent on a review of the collections as stated in 5.1?
Through you, convener, it's not solely dependent. One of the aspects that Museums Gallery Scotland will look at when deciding whether to grant accredited status or not is the good governance of the museum, and it would be considered good governance to review collection development policies every 5 years. So that is Museums Gallery Scotland advice. So whether or not we did that process, accreditation probably wouldn't pass or fail on that one basis, but it would be symptomatic perhaps of a not so well run institution if it was not seeking to review its policies on a regular basis. So it's important just to review our policies and to make sure that the governing body for the museum, which is obviously the Inverclyde Council, has sight of those policies and is happy to review those on a periodic basis.
Well, thanks, that helps clarify. So would such a review begin quite soon?
Yes, through you, convener. We have actually, our accreditation has been in abeyance. Members will remember that what institution was closed for quite a long period of time for the recent refurbishment. It wasn't possible to undertake accreditation, or the revision of accreditation while we were closed. We would have undergone that process again when we reopened, except that was when COVID hit. Museums Gallery Scotland have not asked any museum to renew their accredited status within that time period. Coincidentally, we just heard the other day that they will be asking us to review next year. So the museum will be going again for accredited status at some point in 2022, and obviously further reports will be brought back to this committee about that process at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Alana. Just to make absolutely clear, nothing we are doing puts our ability to attract funding in jeopardy.
No, as far as I'm aware, no.
Thank you. Thanks, Alana.
Okay, Martin. It was just on Chris's question. I was just thinking many years ago, we sold our collection of Benin bronzes at that point in time and got quite a lot of money on it. I'm just thinking now, it's just as well we did, or else we might need to repatriate them for zero. So I think it was good timing at that point in time. So with that, can we agree the paper? Thank you. Can we move to agenda item number 6? Now, agenda item number 6 has got an appendix, which is titled 14 on your papers, which is actually the appendix for this paper. Can I ask members, if you are going to ask any question regarding the appendix, can you wait and we'll move into private session at that point in time. But with that, we'll just go ahead with the paper just now, and I'll ask Tony to introduce it. Tony.
Thank you very much, convener. So this report provides the committee with an update on a number of things relating to the culture and communities aspects of the service. Firstly, I suppose I won't go into any detail around the IL strategic plan because there was an elected members briefing on that matter. Just to note as well that there were 2 significant plans which were approved by the Inverclyde Alliance. We've provided links to those, which are the CLD strategic plan, which is our partnership plan for community learning development, and also the Child Poverty Action report to year 3, which was submitted to the Scottish Government. Also for noting is the allocation of round one of the new community grants fund, which is the former GTVO and waivers. And also an update's been provided on the communication and engagement groups, how they're progressing, and also the funding that we got from New Scots Get Connected, which we received in terms of settling New Scots in the area. And also, I suppose, an assurance about the governance of our own self-managed community halls. There's also a few additional updates in the report which were requested by committee. That's the Prevention and Education Steering Group. Also the community provision for children with autism, and just a slight amendment to what was written in the report, and that's that Youth Connections has now reopened. Just a very brief update. I haven't really given you any detail on it, but we are in ongoing discussions with Rankin Park Bowling Club around their condition survey, and also we've provided a kind of interim update on the subsidised swimming. We'd obviously like to get to a point where we've had a kind of full year's data on that. So happy to take any questions on the report.
Okay, thanks, Tony. First comment I have is from Elizabeth. Councillor Robertson.
Thanks, Jim. I've got a couple of comments. Firstly, it's a kind of sideways declaration because a couple of organisations I'm involved in got funding through the Community Grants Fund, but it's not mentioned in the report, but obviously there's a link in the report, so just a wee sideways shout to that. I'm delighted to hear about Youth Connections opening back up again. I think that's a real step in the right directions, and I guess well done in terms of everybody being able to negotiate that taking place. The next comment I've got is really about, and it's something that I'd said at the briefing and I have said before, but I'll keep saying it, I guess, until something changes. The high-level priorities for Inverclyde Leisure, just looking at the bullet pointed list there in 5.1, don't disagree with any of them being high-level priorities for Inverclyde Leisure, but there is nothing there at all about the health of the community. And the recovery of the organisation or the company must surely be linked to the health of the community, and I'm still disappointed that there's nothing articulated by Inverclyde Leisure in terms of that. And my final comment is really just in terms of the information that we now have in terms of subsidised swimming. Thanks to everybody for allowing us to proceed on the basis of trying to achieve this and find this information. I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of it all working, because we've had an awful period of human history to contextualise all this, but it's a really good start in terms of getting a sense of who's actually using the swimming within the community. So again, thanks to everybody involved in making that happen.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. What I'll do is I'll ask Tony maybe to take your comments on about Inverclyde Leisure and ensure that they're passed on to Inverclyde Leisure, if that's okay, Elizabeth.
They're happy what the report was written before.
Okay, right. Sorry, Hugh, will you want to come in?
Yeah, obviously I brought up the comments that Councillor Robson raised at the briefing session with Inverclyde Leisure on the meeting I had on Friday. And within the full link, there's a number of health and wellbeing in the full report, which is being given to you within the link. It mentions quite a lot about health and wellbeing, but not in the paper, but in the whole actual strategic link to, and I spoke to Kieran about it, but Kieran's quite happy to meet with you, Councillor Robson, one-to-one if you had more concerns about it.
Okay.
That's really helpful. Sorry, Jim, that's really helpful, thank you. I think in terms of if they are the high level priorities, it should be there, but I will pick that up with Kieran, and again, thanks for the offer of that.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Chris Hurley, Chris.
Thank you, convener. Thanks, Jim. I think just on 6.0, I put it as a question, but I think it's mostly a comment. I'll know it's an interim results or interim information. Obviously, waits for the full year. But I'm rather heartened by the breakdown of the deciles between our school age population and what they call those that are using swimming. There's almost an exact match. I think it shows basically that the free swimming is doing what it should be doing, and it's attracting people of all what they call economic zones to get to use the swimming. So that's good. It doesn't look like there's any real barriers to people utilising swimming, which is great. So I think it's certainly made the case in my mind for free swimming, and hopefully we can see how we can progress that going forward.
Okay, I'll let Ruth come in at that point.
Through you, convener, yes, I agree, Councillor Kelly. What I would just advise is some caution around these statistics, because they will take into account the summer holiday period when usage might change as well. So that's why the paper says it probably isn't typical usage. We need to have some term time usage to compare with this round.
Is that okay, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I think obviously I acknowledge the fact that they're not incomplete statistics, but I think it's certainly looking promising anyway.
Okay. Councillor Quinn, Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of quick questions. So under 4.3, obviously we're now under the new system. So I just wondered if we are going to give some sort of feedback on that. You know, the fact that we've merged the sports element to the community element. I'm already getting a couple of groups kind of phoning me to asking me, you know, the difference of maybe the questions in the, you know, in the application form. So it'd just be good to kind of try and get some feedback, positive or otherwise, after that process, just to see if there's maybe any minor tweaks that could happen to make it clearer for the groups. That would be good. Under 4.4, I just noted that we've got 2 pilot locality planning groups. I'm just wondering if we got an idea of a date for the other 4 to kind of reach that level as well. And under 4.6, we mentioned the action plan. It was just to see if we've got where we see sight of that. Does that feature in another action plan? You know, as forms part of that. It's just where that action plan will be published and where we can view that. And I've probably welcome a discussion under 5.2, but I realise that that's a private paper, so I don't know if we need to go into private session to have that discussion.
On 5.2, we've got a private appendix, so it's only if you've got a question that relates to the private appendix. I'm just wanting to align just to make sure that I've got clarity on that. So if it's a general question, it'll be okay. But if it's a question relating to the appendix, then we're going to private this session to discuss it with.
Yeah, it's the appendix.
Okay.
It's the specifics that are mentioned in the appendix.
So
yeah.
at the end, we'll go into the private session and you'll be able to ask your question there.
Fine,
looking at Tony. Tony, have you got Lynn's questions there?
Okay, yeah, we will, once we've gone through the grants, we will seek feedback from the groups. I've not had any negative comments yet, but that's not to say there aren't any. It's just that I don't know of any yet, and I think, you know, they seem to work well, and certainly we went through the meeting as well, that, you know, the members of the committee managed to get through about 65 grants in about a couple of hours. So in terms of the administration of it, it worked really well. Totally accept that this is a new process, and I'd happily take any feedback that you've got from groups so that we can try and improve the system. Just drop me a line and we will feed it back into the system, and we'll keep trying to improve it as we do it. In terms of the action plan, sorry, is that okay?
4.6, Councillor Quinn, it's in the Alcohol and Drug Partnership papers.
Okay,
but I can send you a copy if you'd rather me send you directly a copy of it.
No, it's fine. I'll find it there. It was just where that sits. I knew it probably sits somewhere else. It was just where the home is for it. No,
yeah.
That's good.
Prevention and education within the Alcohol Drug Partnership papers.
Great. And just 4.4 then, community engagement groups.
Okay, in terms of the communication engagement groups fall under my remit, but the locality groups, strange that was that. We're all working together on it, but I'm not aware of the plans to do the other 4. We're still doing some of the learning from the initial 2, and trying to bottom out as the frequency of the meetings so that partners can support the groups as well, because often some of our partners will be attending all of the groups, and while it's better for the residents maybe meeting once every 6 weeks, we've got to think of our partners' ability to keep that up as well. So we just haven't made any plans for the remaining 4 at this point, but we will certainly, we're just doing the learning from the first 2. I don't know whether Ruth would like to come in addition.
Ruth?
No, agree, but maybe just to support what Tony's saying, the communication engagement groups, I think it's implied why the 6 are up and running and they're working in various ways. The locality planning groups were always going to be a pilot and building upon those tests. So they're working at different speeds.
Lynn?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just my concern if there's too big a gap, then it looked like a wee bit of inequality there. If there's 2 groups that are well ahead, I'm just concerned how that'll look to the other 4 groups who are, you know, have not had that conversation. So it's fine. I realise there's going to be a gap. I think it was just a concern that gap would be too wide, you know, and others feel as if they've been left behind. That's probably my concern. And just a point on the community grants. It wasn't negative comments. I think it was more just confusion. So I think everything's been positive. It was just slightly confusing because questions are maybe geared towards the sports side and they didn't know they could ignore it, if you like. So, but I can send you a kind of email just clarifying that if that would be useful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Go to Councillor McCabe next, Stephen.
Yeah, my question is in relation to 4.7, obviously, which talks about the community services for children and young people with autism, and it highlights their sort of services not reopening since COVID. It would be interesting to know what sort of barriers these services are, I suppose, facing and what we could do to help them overcome the barriers. And it would be useful to get an overview in terms of, I suppose, youth services more generally. To what extent have services opened up again? Because certainly I've had representations at a national level about youth services not necessarily opening as quickly as the national organisations would like. So just to get an overview specifically where we are with these groups in terms of supporting them, but more generally about youth provision, to what extent has it reopened?
We'll bring Hugh in first of all. Hugh, do you want to comment on that, or Tony? Hugh.
For yourself, convener, yeah, all our IU zones are starting to reopen again. There is a delayed. We were taking guidance from Youth Link Scotland, as you're probably aware, convener, around that. But we've now got IU zones for Glasgow opened and are looking to open the stuff in Greenock. We're engaging with young people on the street. Our focus was detached youth work, to do more work in the street with our young people, and now starting to open rebuilding buildings under a social distancing format. We are working with the groups that we've mentioned about to try and get them back into our facilities, so I can come back with a report to see how we can do that, maybe in the January committee, see how they're ready to move forward. But I think it's down to them as an individual group trying to obviously move forward, but we can support that and we'll get more information back to you.
I mean, that would be helpful. I mean, obviously, as I said, opening any services under COVID restrictions, albeit we're obviously beyond level 0, but there are still restrictions and mitigations required, is obviously probably challenging. So it's just if we can do anything to make it easier for these groups to sort of get open up again, because at the end of the day, kids with autism probably more than most do need that sort of social contact that these type of groups provide.
Okay, so, okay, thanks, Stephen. Roberts, Martin.
Thanks, Jim. I was just I'm just looking for information. You see in 4.2 Child Poverty Action Report, the bullet point 1, it's an expansion of the discretionary housing policy. How do those people, my question is, how do the people eligible for this support know that they are eligible for the support? I mean, are they alerted externally by the council or by some other agency?
Tony?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Councillor Brennan? The first bit of it I missed. Sorry.
No, you're fine, Tony. It was a Child Poverty Action Report, and it's the first bullet point, and it's about the expansion of discretionary housing policy. Now, no doubt that makes more people eligible for the benefit. How do they know that they're eligible? Do we alert them, or what?
I can't answer that, to be honest, at this point, but I will get a response back to you.
I'll let you comment. Are you okay? Is that fine? We'll get a response back. Is that okay, Martin?
Oh no, thanks very much, thank you.
Now, I don't think I've called in Councillor MacLeod this item yet, so Jim, if I've not called you in, apologies. Is there any questions you want to ask?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. My question was going to be in a similar vein to what Stephen had raised under 4.7 about community provision for children and young people with autism. I mean, first of all, I'm glad to hear that Hugh said that the I zones are beginning to open up again. I know the I zone in Port Glasgow has been used over the last few years by the A team up there, so that's certainly good for the young people with autism there, that they're going to be able to get out, meet with friends and take part in activities again there. So it is. But my bigger concern is that obviously the pandemic struck. It's affected, many people, of course, but particularly young people over the last 18, 19 months. And we know some of the difficulties that children have had, but as Stephen mentioned himself, barriers are different for obviously people with disabilities and for people, children, young people with autism. So it'd be good to find out more information about what's been done. Even before the pandemic, of course, there was an initiative to look at how to improve services and try and make things better for people with autism in Inverclyde. And it would be good to find out where we are on that. I know that's certainly the more to do with health and social care partnership, but it's linked in here in this item. And obviously my concerns are obviously with the Beach for Autism Centre closing down in Rattle Street. So it's finding out what some of the young people are doing who previously went to the centre there. So maybe a further report to give us more information would be useful. Thank you.
Again, I'll let Ruth come in there because obviously there is a cross-department thing with Alan Stevenson now as well, but I'll let Ruth come in. Ruth?
Yes, Alan Stevenson, an HSCPLE, leading on the autism strategy, which is a council-wide strategy to look at different aspects of autism. What I would say is when we look particularly at some of the needs of our young people, especially those on the autistic spectrum and also those with disabilities, the services tried very, very hard to keep connections going. Now, if you think of some of the stories when we first went into pandemic, some of the young people who had the most vulnerable health-wise were seeing people the least. And actually, Craig Marlock worked very, very hard to make sure they had that human contact with the school, to make sure that they could visit when it was appropriate. The other thing we've got is Play for All over the summer, and that provides a really good respite and care for young people, but it tends to be at the more severe and complex area. What we did find when we ran the childcare is that there was quite a significant uptake for those families who have children on the autistic spectrum, and actually that's some of the learning we would take forward is actually to make sure that we give training to the people running any summer programs to make sure it's absolutely inclusive and that we're making sure that we're catering fully for the needs of children on the autistic spectrum. So there was a lot in your comments and your questions there, Councillor MacLeod. But and I'll speak to Alan Stevenson, who will maybe give you an update on the autism strategy, which is wider council remit. But also happy to speak to you as well about all the different types of provision we've got just within what we already know and will be taken forward next year.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Is that okay, Jim?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Good. I can't see any more questions in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw close to the public part of the agenda, and I'm going to make the resolution and move into private section.
Yes, thank you, Convener. That's absolutely correct if you move the resolution.